So, Ray is a former, well, he was an Army Infantry Intelligence Officer and CIA analyst for 30 years. He worked under 3 different administrations, being responsible for giving the presidential briefing daily, or how often, to the presidents of the United States over 3 administrations. And he has a lot of experience. And he also founded an interesting organization, which I'll let him tell you about. And then wanted to have a short Q&A, and want to welcome people who aren't familiar with Code Pink and Nevada Desert Experience to lead the Q&A for initially, because we want to hear from you who maybe didn't know very much about the drone program. We want to hear what you think about it, and comments and questions.
That was a lot, and what I suggest is just take a whole minute just to be quiet. Do whatever you like to do in a quiet minute before we begin. This is your Q&A section. What we planned is for us to answer questions you have about the film itself, things you saw there that I would be able to answer some light on. And then the idea is to come back after a short break, and then I give a little presentation of 15 to 20 minutes of some of the things that I know about the background, development of drones, and the model of drones. This is law school after all, and other things like that. So this is your 10, 15, whatever minutes you'd like to have. Again, if you need to recover. But for those of you who have questions ready, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Yes, please.
The woman got a plaque for...
Could you identify yourself first?
No, Bob Brown. I'm retired from the federal government, worked in the regulatory agencies.
Bob Brown from the federal government, retired.
I had a question about the 121,000 people that were listed as the targets. Who were the actual targets, the individuals, and what did they represent? And also, what were the outcomes of those?
Yeah.
It wasn't 121,000 people killed. It was 121,000 maybe injured and killed, or what? What did it mean? But first, I'm more interested in the political question of who the people were.
There are statistics available that I'll think about for you. But the problem is how you identify these people. And if they're military-age males, they are presumed to be terrorists. If there's 2 or 3 of them, they're presumed to be terrorists in a group. Now, the exception is if after you drone strike them, you go down and you find on their ID they're not terrorists, you then also subtract them from the roster of terrorists, so-called, killed. That is how bad it is. People ask me about the weapons that are used, the Hellfire missiles. The terms used themselves are telling, aren't they? Hellfire missiles, Predator, Reaper, Hunter aircraft, and so forth, 100 people. Now, the Hellfire missiles that are typically strung underneath the wings of these drones are incredibly precise. They were developed as anti-tank weapons. So people say, well, are they precise? And the answer is yes. The problem is the targeting information. Some of that come out here. The targeting information is incredibly imprecise. In other words, a lot of the people have been killed because they had a cell phone number, or they had a cell phone number that was associated in some way with some suspected terrorist that had lunch in Beirut with another suspected terrorist. That's how bad it was. That's how NSA does it with their telephones, with the cell phones. So General Hayden, who used to be head of NSA, bragged about killing people by cell phone. So that's a problem. I don't know exactly what happened to the 121,000, but we'll find out what the latest statistics are, because there's a very reputable British firm that keeps track of this, and it's pretty much relied on by everybody, on the people who have been killed by drones. It would be funny if it weren't so serious that the only way you can escape being a terrorist is after they bomb you, they go down and find some ID and say, no, that it was a shopkeeper. But even then, if you're a shopkeeper, it's awful. So I don't know, but I'll check on the statistics if you come back after the break, I'll have them for you.
I just wanted to encourage you, if you're curious about that question and you want to learn more, is to go to The Intercept, which is an alternative news site. And they did an incredible release of a report that, from information they got from an insider, called the Drone Papers. And if you just Google the Drone Papers, you might be able to find it, but it's under The Intercept. And what I remember in particular that was revealed is a 6-month period in Afghanistan, if my details are correct, that I'm remembering, 29 out of 30 people who were killed were unknown. So out of every 30 individuals that were killed in a 6-month period, only 1 of the 30 did they know who they were killing. So we can call this a precise instrument, but the precision about who they're killing is totally different. And anyway, and even if they know they're killing the man they're targeting, they know who that person is, anybody who's in the area gets killed also. The US is willing to sacrifice the bystanders in order to get the person they're targeting.
Have they ever said how many leaders, shall we say, they're actually going after, and that they're only going after leaders, or what's been said on that? Since we're fighting a war over there, somebody should be saying who it is we're fighting.
It's kind of bogus, it's war on terrorism.
Yeah, right.
So, if you want to name a terrorist, fine. Now, if you don't want to capture that, see, when I was in the Army, the slogan of the orders were to capture or kill, right? Now it's just kill. Why do you want to capture somebody? Because then you just have to get to Guantanamo or someplace like that. That's a real problem. It's political and it's much easier to kill, particularly in a place like Afghanistan, where the terrain is so incredibly difficult that it's really hard to send your troops in there like so many nations have done and fight to conquer the strange people there who have this strange way of looking at invaders who don't like them and have repelled everyone from Alexander the Great, the Russians, it's a long history of people trying to invade. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Peter, I'm a student here. In addition to like citizens of foreign countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, I'm aware that American citizens have also been targeted by drone strikes. Is there any due process in any of this besides like their phone moves?
That's an incredibly good question. Are you in law school?
No.
No, okay. Now, how do you know how this has been danced around by our fancy lawyers in government. Eric Holder, Obama's lawyer, after actually four American citizens were killed by drones, two of them being Awlaki and his son, Abdul Rahman Awlaki. Holder went up before the University of Northwestern University Law School, one of the best law schools I'm told, in Chicago, and was asked about this, and he was well prepared with this. And he said, now look, people object. There's a Fifth Amendment. No one should be deprived of life, liberty, or business, or property without due process. It doesn't say judicial process. It just says due process. And so we do due process right here in the White House. Thank you very much. Can you believe it? And all those budding lawyers at Northwestern Law School took their bet that this may be on the final exams, the interpretation of the Fifth Amendment. Can you believe it? Now, before I came here, I checked with Colleen Rowley, I was a lawyer, used to work for the FBI for many years. I said, now, Colleen, I remember reputable lawyers laughing up their sleeve. Due process has always meant the courts, always meant judicial process. So has there been any change since that was March of 2012? He said that. She said, no, they've laughed it off, national security, the legal profession is folded. No one has really questioned this, but there it stands. So there's an institution under government we used to look toward for some balance.
No better than Gonzalez, was he?
Say again?
Alders was no better than Gonzalez, was he?
Well, I guess.
Like Gonzalez, the Gonzalez that wrote the letters for the torture for.
Oh, yeah, well, Gonzalez, Bush was bad enough, but most people don't know how bad
Was no
guys like Holder were, and, justifying killing of American citizens. I don't like the killing of foreign citizens on the targeting that we have of them. But, there is a constitution, there is a Fifth Amendment, and it says due process, and that's always meant judicial process. So I pulled it up, it was a few years ago. It was the 12th of March, 2012, if I remember correctly. I remember just saying, God, that's crazy. What did the press do? Nothing. What did the legal profession do? Zippo. So you have not only the media and the legal profession not doing their job, you got a real problem when it
Military.
starts to the executive. Is that it?
Yeah, so, it wasn't like a Supreme Court. It wasn't like a Supreme Court ruling. Did what he said, did that set a new legal precedent? Just based on what his it wasn't like some sort of Supreme Court ruling, just is what he said, did that set a new legal precedent?
No, we can't set precedent.
It used to be we had three separate branches of government. Now we have the executive, and the judiciary in this case falls to the, Holder says, we can do this now. Now where does this end? If you give the president the right to look at a list of people, including US citizens, to kill without judicial process, that means he can kill any of us with what he considers to be doing due process right in the White House. And the legal profession has said, diddly on it. Yes, please.
I was just gonna make a remark on that. I mean, we don't, you want me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Everybody can hear you. I just wanted to make a remark on what you were saying. I don't feel like it will really stop. I mean, we haven't really been able to see it stop. Obama, under his administration, he enacted a law that made it legal to be held as a terrorist indefinitely. So if you're considered a terrorist or if you're charged under terrorism, you can be held indefinitely without trial. So it really lets you know that if you just go against or whatever, or you feel me, like there's no real end point or no divine line between the black and white area of what's not So it's kind of just scary.
Yeah, it is pretty scary. There is one law called the National Defense Authorization Act, going back about 6 years now, where the Army could come in here and arrest me or any of you and say, you know, you're bad mouthing our policies here, you're cooperating with terrorists, right? And then put you away from, no, I don't wanna exaggerate, not forever. They can put you away under the law until the end of the war on terrorism. That's in the law, folks. I talked to Chris Hedges about it. They had a
Hey,
lawsuit.
Chris Hedges, God bless him.
And they had a lawsuit about it. They lost. The Supreme Court ruled against them. So hopefully that won't be reinforced, but it's on the books, and we have to, you know, kind of stand up for what we think now, because what we think later may not matter. Any other questions about this one? I have some notes here that I could use to fill out some facts. Anyone else? Yes, please.
I just wanted to know how many different kind of drones they have, and how many different kinds of drones they have, and how much they cost.
Well, you know, I'm gonna get into that in later remarks, but one of the important advantages of drones is they cost so little, at least in the beginning. $1 million, $2 million. Get shot down, no problem. Lockheed, Raytheon, make more money, you know? Now they're a lot more sophisticated, and I know of a Predator, I know of a Reaper, I know, what was the other one you showed?
Global Hawk.
Right, Global Hawk. Maybe you could speak to any other kinds that are.
Well, I'm not any expert, but my understanding is there are like hundreds of different kinds of drones. And they've done a lot of research on designing these small little ones that can fly into windows and sit on a shelf somewhere and listen to people's conversation. And how much they're actually using them, even in the United States, is very secret, I believe. And you know, smaller military drones that are, you know, just arm length or 2 arm lengths. So there's so many different kinds, and but what I would like to know, especially by the people who, you know, are new faces for us, you know who they are. This reenactment of an actual drone strike, and this is a real dialogue. This isn't just made up communication. This is what the people who are at Creech Air Force Base, how they're communicating to people at other locations that are connected to the drone killing. And it's eye-opening to hear the way they talk about and prepare to take a life away on the other side of the planet. I would love to hear what you all think about that. Does anybody feel like commenting?
I mean, I guess you could say that I feel like as though we've been preconditioned in a way, growing up, all the video games we played and all that stuff, it kind of like idolized military action and just being overseas and oh, this is cool, killing isn't maybe as bad. It's completely different than the actual reality of actually taking somebody's life. And it's really not really felt, I guess. And so after the fact that then you have PTSD, and then what happens? As we see in the film, you sometimes can't get the help you need, and therefore not only taking their life, but then your life now is at play, and then the lives of people around you, and it's just a trickle down system where I feel like it only gets worse, and as we start to normalize with it, as with school shootings, as with all this other things, it's gonna become even more dangerous because of how hard it's gonna be able to see it, and how hard it is to be able to connect it to the life that we're living here. Like, this is so different than it is overseas, and being scared to even go, like they're saying, go outside and see fresh air, and breathe fresh air, and hope for a rainy day because then the drones can't see you. Like, that's so crazy to me that that's a normal life for people overseas.
Well, as a veteran, my first comment is I thought the way you framed the question was kind of judgy. That I've heard a little demonizing and dehumanizing in the language you use towards my peers. That said, I don't remember your name, but you brought up a good point that Obama and Holder were just as complicit as Gonzalez. And this was a real issue for veterans during the last presidential election, because one candidate had a history of being a hawk, and the other candidate was someone with no political experience. So, you know, it was like, do we vote for more of the same? And a lot of veterans chose something different. And so I think we need to look at the messaging and how all of this is tied together if we really want to have a good, open, healthy, respectful dialogue.
I really appreciate your honesty and would like to hear more specifically so I can understand what it is I said that was so just to.
Toby? Can't hear you.
No, I really want to thank her honesty, for criticizing what I said, and I want, because I'm trying to think about what I said and how it was hard for you to hear that. And could you be more specific?
There is too much of a temporal lag for me to remember exact phraseology. But if you do any kind of martial
I'm Yusuf, and you asked how to interpret the conversation between the pilots and the reenactment. Well, my view of it is simple. It's essentially hunting. It's not a metaphor, it's just hunting. So you're just hunting. So you're hunting in a way you just want to kill, and you don't see anything else. So it looks like they are praying, but in the end, it has to be something nefarious. You essentially want to kill. So you are a hunter, and so you are in mood with this fiction that these are essentially animal-like, human terrorists. So the problem with these former pilots, as I see, is that they can see so intimately what is happening in their lives that they cannot sustain this fiction that they are just monster animals. So then is when they are caught in their PTSD. That's my view of it. But you're talking about Holder. I think we should be aware that no matter how much we love Obama, particularly compared with the current president and Bush, but the great invention of Obama following your lead was that Bush took them to Guantanamo and tortured them, but Obama had a great invention, which was don't capture or kill. So this principle of don't capture or kill is not just a made up. There are entire books written on that, and many instances in which they could have captured, but it presented problems, and it was kind of illegal to capture. But killing was all right, because in a way, the whole policy assumes this premise that these are terrorists, so you treat them essentially in a kind of animal-like situation where they don't have human rights. So killing them is not homicide, actually, in the end. It's like in the unseen Roman times.
Well, I'm glad you used the word hunting, because some of you
Home of the hunters.
Creech Air Force Base, right on their front plaque in front of the base, they call themselves the home of the hunters. And we have to kind of ask ourselves, are we meant to be hunting other human beings in the earth? But I think that it's about a good time to take a little break, and I'm hoping that all the people that are here will interact, coming from different places, different understandings. I would love to have conversations with each one of you. I'm sure Ray would too, and then we'll take a short break. We have some refreshments outside and some lemon water, and then come back and we are so lucky to have Ray McGovern in our presence. He has a lot of experience to share with us.
took some notes on this thing, which I've seen for the third time, and before we go, for those of you who might not be able to come back, how many of you have seen this in a movie theater? Yeah, this one.
I don't know.
Uh,
One thing
yeah,
is,
oh,
this
one?
had the worst sound of any I've
In
seen.
where?
I've seen it 3 times.
At Berkeley, okay.
I've seen, Ray,
Yeah,
I've seen it 3 times.
yeah,
And this had the worst sound I've ever seen.
okay.
You couldn't even understand any of it as far as I'm concerned.
But it hasn't been played in many theaters, right? There's reasons for
Why,
that,
yeah.
you get things like that. Now, this is really bad because this is how the media, Hollywood, and all this control this kind of stuff. I can tick off 5 films that would be very revealing. You know what's going on. They don't play in the major theaters.
What are they?
Well, there's one called A Good American. Bill Biddy, NSA. How many have seen that one?
What is it?
It's
Good
available
American.
online.
Good American.
Good American.
Oh,
It's produced by an Austrian producer, director. It's terrific. It's by NSA and Bill Biddy. So that's a major teaching point. The media is a main part of the problem. The military is another part of the problem. Who profits from this kind of thing?
More
Great
profiteers, more profiteers.
The general, so a person who gets another star on his shoulder. The military industrial complex. You know, these things keep going, and there's no sensible reason for it other than look at who who profits from it. Karzai, he was the president of Afghanistan. After U.S. forces had murdered, that's the word for it, several families in a remote village, Karzai got direct word from it because I think one of the families were related directly to him. So he called Petraeus in. And as Petraeus was waiting in the wings there, he had discussions with some of his colonels and so forth. And then they went in to see Karzai, and what Petraeus said is, and I quote, "We think that those parents were happy to have us kill them and their children to give us a black name." Karzai lost it, threw Petraeus out of the room. His aides could not believe what Karzai went to Petraeus and said, "That's the mentality. Anything against the U.S., whether it's killing your own kids or whatever, is easily explained by trying to lack it, trying to, you can look it up. It was written up in the Washington Post. Last thing I say here is simply this. We have to have near certainty. Continuous and imminent threat. Full-faced lies. How can you describe what happens in Afghanistan as a threat to the American people and an imminent one? So, you know, we had a sign up yesterday, war is a lie. Then it said president's lie. Then it said general's lie. And then it said Congress lies. And then it said the people lie. It was very true, very poignant. So those are just some of the little things that came out of the film for me. If there are no other immediate questions, I hope that you will all come back.
Actually, Eleanor is suggesting that we just
Just keep
continue
going.
on, because we're afraid that some of you will leave and you'll miss Ray's.
Well, how do we do if we don't
it's
have
also
that?
getting late.
It's getting late, just keep going. And if you need to step out, the bathrooms
How
are
about
outside.
Will you all come back? Or
No, I think we should skip the break.
would you like a 5, I wonder if some people
Well,
need a little
let's
5
just-
minute break.
who wants to keep going, now? Okay, it looks like you guys have it.
Elmo's always right, I'm saying.
Okay. Let me talk a little bit about white drones. I spent a lot of time in the intelligence community, and the big thing that we profited from was technology. And it was that technology that allowed arms control agreements. It allowed not only Reagan, but Nixon to trust, because we could verify. Okay. First, we just had U-2 aircraft, you know, but we found the missiles in Cuba, okay, luckily that was prevented. And then we developed these satellites that go around the world. You won't believe what we could find out from those satellites, but the problem with that was that they only went around twice a day. And smart countries figured out when their sensitive installations would be imaged. When I say imaged, it doesn't mean just photography. It means radar, it means infrared, it means multispectral, it means a whole host of things mounted on these satellites. You wouldn't believe they can see through clouds, they can see at night. It's amazing, okay? Now, there's still a problem, because they only went around the world twice a day. In other words, the orbit was twice a day. Now, we in the intelligence community realized that we needed something that could have what we call the dual capability. Something that could go up and dwell over a target, watch it for a day, maybe 2 days or 3 days, and see what was really going on in there, okay? In our day, it was usually a Soviet nuclear installation or a Chinese one, but then, you know, it became useful to kind of get this capability, and somebody said, I know what we do. We can do this with drones. So drones, my friends, were originally developed for real specific purposes back in the 90s, big time. And I knew about that. And people who worked with us in the Pentagon said, we got this capability now, we can set up a drone, and in real time, they can send back a signal, send us what's going on video, and we could find out what's going on there. Okay, great rejoicing in the intelligence community. Then somebody said, some general said, hey, I bet we can put some weapons on that and shoot people. And they went to the contractors, to Raytheon, Lockheed, said, can you do that? Of course we can. We got just a missile for it, very active, low fire missile for tanks, or for anything. So that's the way this thing got started. Once the generals realized that you can have a dual capability for these things, the drones were off and running. One problem, they easily shot down. I can't understand why more haven't been shot down. But they're easily shot down, but they're very cheap, comparatively speaking, certainly cheaper than satellites. And when they started out, the price tag was a couple million a piece. So that's how they started, and it's kind of symptomatic of how the military industrial complex should take something that's relatively innocent. I mean, collecting aerial photography over possible enemy or even friend's territory, you know, it's always been accepted in international law, but all of a sudden you put these weapons on them, and you've got a very, very potent weapon that stays up there forever. We talked about the legality of it. If there are further questions, you can hold until later. What else? Well, maybe the most important thing that I can share from my own experience is something that I learned, gosh, it was just earlier this year, and it was a quotation from James Baldwin. Does everyone know who James Baldwin is? Good, good. Okay, now I put it in my computer, so I'm gonna, rather than paraphrase it, there it is, right there. Okay. Anyone know who Angela Davis was? Okay. So Angela Davis has just been arrested, right? And she's a real serious trouble. And she's in handcuffs, and Newsweek magazine and Look magazine, they're all front page pictures of Angela Davis in handcuffs and chains, okay? July 1970. Baldwin, who's in France, writes her this letter. Dear sister, November 19, 1970. One might have hoped that by this hour, the very sight of chains on black flesh would be so unbearable a memory that they would spontaneously rise up, the American people would, and strike off the manacles. But no, now more than ever, Americans appear to measure their safety in the chains and corpses of others. And so, Newsweek can put you on its cover, chained. You look exceedingly alone. As alone, say, as the Jewish housewife, Oxcar headed to Dachau, or as any one of us, any one of our ancestors chained together during the long ocean passage. Well, since we live in an age in which silence is not only criminal but suicidal, I have been making as much noise as I can here in Europe. In fact, I have just returned from a land called Germany, which was made notorious by a silent majority not so very long ago. Baldwin continues. Let me put it this way. As long as white Americans take refuge in their whiteness, they will allow millions of other people to be slaughtered. So long as their whiteness puts so sinister a distance between their own experience and the experience of others, they will never feel themselves sufficiently worthwhile to become responsible for themselves. As he once put it in our black church, they will persist and perish in their sins, that is, in their delusions. We know that a person is not a thing, and is not to be placed at the mercy of other things. We know that air and water belong to all mankind, and not merely to the wealthy. This is 1970, folks. Baldwin. Air and water belong to everyone. Clean air, clean water, not just the wealthy. We know that a baby does not come into this world merely to be the instrument of someone else's profit. Finally, my dear sister Angela, some of us, white and black, know how great a price has already been paid to bring a new consciousness. If we know that, then we must fight for your life as though it were our own, which it is. We must render impassable with our own bodies the corridor to the gas chamber. For if they come to take you in the morning, they will be coming for us that night. Therefore, peace, Brother James. The original sin of our country we have to recognize as racism. It started out from the very beginning. It persists to this view of an exceptional nation, an indispensable nation, which translates down into still, for many of us, a white supremacist nation. You saw the victims, they look anything like most of us? No. Does it make it easier to kill people? People in groups, or slopes, or carol jockeys?
Yep.
If you demonize them, marginalize them, dehumanize them, yeah, it does. So, it's really up to us folks, We're not gonna get it from the generals. We're not even gonna get it from the people that we normally look toward for moral leadership. And I'm talking about the leaders of our churches, synagogues, and mosques. Now, there's good news in that, because it's up to us. Andy Gilliard, one of my favorite theologians, put it this way, there's only us, there never has been any other. But it is us. And Dr. King talked about there being such a thing as too late. I'll finish here, because the hour's getting long. Finish here by quoting something that means a lot to me, because I've spent so much time in Germany, 5 years. And I asked Germans, young and old, how could it be that the most cultured, the most educated, one of the most educated countries in the world, certainly in Western Europe, could let what happened happen? Their 30s, 40s in Germany. Here's what they told me. They didn't have any answers. I looked a little deeper. Some of you have heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the Lutheran minister who tried his best to form a church that was a real confessing church, a church that did more than just spread the word, but moved the word to action. But there was another patriot that nobody knows about, maybe nobody, if you do, you know. The name was Albert Haushofer. Good, nobody knows about Haushofer, Albrecht Haushofer, okay? I can tell you very briefly about him. He was a geologist, a geologist, and he had tenure at the University of Berlin. Now, some of you probably know what tenure means, right? It's no small thing. You get tenure, okay, even then, that meant a lot. How do you get tenure? By keeping his mouth shut. Play it along, okay? So, he moved ahead, and as his Jewish friends and other friends that were politically unwelcome got wrapped up, well, Albrecht got his tenure. Now, as it happened, he had a conscience as well. And so finally, his conscience spoke to him. And he started speaking out against the Third Reich, against Hitler. And could be quite a little following. Of course, it was viewed as a threat, picked up, thrown into a prison, another prison in Berlin, not the same one as Haushofer. In Haushofer's, they hanged you, they shot you. But the Germans were very meticulous, you know how the Germans are supposed to be. Well, they were. And before they would shoot you or hang you, you had to confess. You had to sign a confession. Now, Haushofer said, that's for the birds, I'm not going to confess anything. I said, all right, well, you have to confess, so think about it. Then the Allies were coming, and they were about a week away from liberating this whole thing. And they shot him anyway. Now, as they picked Haushofer up off the floor, out of his pocket slips this little anybody have German? Little piece of paper, a little zettel, okay? And it's his confession. And he's written it in the form of a sonnet. And it's in German, but it's very brief, and I'll recite it and translate it for you. Schuld. No Germans here? Schuld. Guilt. So it's his confession. Guilt. Doch bin ich schuldig, aber anders als Sie denken. Yeah, not guilty, but it's not what you're thinking. Ich musste früher meine Pflicht erkennen. Ich muss das schärfer Unheil nennen. I should have more earlier recognized my duty. I should have more sharply called evil, evil. Mein Urteil habe ich zu lange gedenkt. I put off my judgment for too long. Ich habe gewarnt. I did warn, and he did. Aber nicht genug. Genug, my friends, is enough. Okay? Ich habe gewarnt, aber nicht genug. Und klar, klar is klaro, right? There's no comparative in German for klar, klar, clear is clear. Ich habe gewarnt, aber nicht genug und klar, und heute weiß ich, was ich schuldig war. I did warn, but not enough, clearly enough, and today I recognize what I was guilty of. So that was his confession, not having spoken out early enough, not having spoken out boldly enough. And I think we need to put ourselves in this position. We want to be looking at our grandchildren in 5 years, and as they start droning us and as they start imposing the restrictions that already exist on the books. So are we going to say, well, wir haben gewarnt, we did warn, aber nicht genug. And not early enough. So things are pretty serious, and it's not as though we should despair, because look at you guys, just look around the room here, we've had enough. We're in it, and we're in it for the long haul, so we have to be aware of these things. Advertise this movie everywhere you go, and I'm sure that some of you want to say a few more words before we exit the premises. Okay, unless there's some.
You have
Yes.
questions?
Please, hello?
I would just say for people who haven't worked, that we have not worked with, that we invite you to come up to Creech Air Force Base. We're up there this week. We are visualing outside the gate of the Air Force Base to remind people where they work, that they are working at a base where the occupation, where the job is killing. And we invite you to come up and join us at some of the vigils, or come up to the Goddess Temple Guest House. It's up in Cactus Springs, and have a meal with us, talk with us, meet us. We'd like to hear from you, see what, people are thinking. But we do extend an invitation to join us, and there's a little banner up there that says join us. And so if you want to join us, do. Our website is codepink.org if you want more information. I have a little leaflet here which has my phone number on it, so you could at least get in touch, my email, so you could at least touch with me. And the leaflet has to do with a current Code Pink campaign of divest from the war machine. And I think that's just part of this whole process of this issue of divesting from war and investing in peace. There's just some suggestions in here on how people can move their money so that they're not supporting banks, insurance companies, pension funds, and so on, that invest in Raytheon, General Atomics, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and so on. So if you'd like a copy of this, here it is. It applies to any place in the country, although some of the specifics have to do with the San Francisco Bay Area where I come from, but there's some really good information in here about how to find out what your money is invested in. Anyway, so, and my phone number is on, my email address is on the back. I'm sorry, we should have brought a leaflet or something, but if you want to get in touch with us, that's one way to do it. And again, please join us, and do come by the Goddess Temple or the guest house up in Cactus Springs. It's about an hour north of here, just right above Indian Springs. Thank you.
And a final word from my son that does our website. I'm able to tell him now that I told people about our website, because I just wrote it on the thing. It's real hard to remember, RavenGovernment.com. Maybe since this has been a tough 2 hours or so, maybe we could finish on a lighter note with a limerick from Rudyard Kipling. What would you think?
That sounds good.
That'd be all right? Okay.
He was an imperialist, though. He's kind of a low-life character, I'm saying.
It's actually a prologue limerick. It is not wise for the Christian white, jealous of the Asian brown. For the Christian miles and the Asian smiles, they weareth the Christian Now, at the end of the fight lies a tombstone white with the name of the late deceased, and an epitaph reared, "A fool lies here who tried to hustle the East." On that happy note, let's all go and try to relax and try to think about this and what we can do. Because as my prophet Daniel Ellsberg like to say, the difference between doing nothing and doing something is everything.
I'd like to say that our vigil starts in the morning on the highway outside Creech Air Force Base at about 6:30, and it goes till 9. And we also have a vigil in the afternoon, which goes from 3:30 to about 5:30. Thank you.
And you can come have lunch with us.
If you want to see some imaginative signage and some imaginative people, I've had the pleasure of being 2 days with these folks, visually morning and afternoon, and the imagination has been applied, and the consciences that I think have been pricked. Like people have to look at us before they go to do their normal chores, and they're really amazing.
Now, some people feel like they need to get home immediately because they're tired, but I want to welcome anybody who wants to hang out and have just informal conversation with us. If you have questions about what we do at Creech when we're there, if you want to have a specifically conversation with Ray, he would love to talk with you. I'm not saying to be here forever, but I do have some refreshments. You can nibble a little bit out in the hallway if you want. If you want to find out specifically what Code Pink's been coming to Creech Air Force Base since 2009, twice a year, almost all of those years, for a week at a time, having a long week of voice to break the silence. It's very criminal what's going on. These are human lives, as you've seen, these are just simple, poor people, basically. Afghanistan is one of the poorest countries in the world. And people are losing their children and their fathers and their mothers, as well as other countries that we're dropping bombs on. And with these wonderful people from Nevada Desert Experience, me and Robert's not here, but they're local. And they go to Creech regularly also, and also are a very strong voice against the nuclear weapons that our country is still developing, modernizing. Millions and millions and millions of dollars spent on nuclear weapons. We should be building schools and hospitals and all of that. So, but come talk with us. We'd love to have a conversation.
One last little detail, I don't know if it was mentioned how long it takes before someone in Creech sees some carcass, identifies them, and somebody in Pakistan or Afghanistan they kill. How long do you suppose it takes?
Quarter of a second.
How?
Quarter of a second.
Well, it's not quite a quarter of a second, but we have a higher number. 2.5 seconds is what I heard. And it's all made possible by that satellite relay station. That you can see the satellite up there, the relay station is in Rammstein. Has to do with the curvature of the world. It's hard to believe, but someone here in Greece can go, and someone is in Pakistan still in 2.5 seconds. Now, one reason I'm trying to get the Germans to get us to make the relay station at Rammstein, because its location is ideal because of the topography and because of the curvature of the earth, actually. And if they had opened somewhere else, then it would take much longer, like 4 seconds or 5 seconds. But you know, it would be something of a coup. They'd have to look for something else. Yeah,
So
well,
is there, I just have a question. What are the people doing in Germany, the Americans doing in Germany in terms of the whole process? I mean, we give an order, I don't even quite understand the conversation between who they are.
That's a very good question. These are U.S. Air Force bases, Rammstein is the biggest one abroad. And it's supposed to be a German Hoheitsgebiet, meaning German sovereign territory. Forget about it. We don't even let the Germans in the relay station. Do they complain? Oh, some of these crazy leftists complain. But they're still acting like the war's just ended. They're still very subservient to the Americans, and they won't kick us out unless the young Germans realize that they don't have to act like their adults did. So the answer is, the Germans allow it because we say it's necessary.
No, I'm wondering, like, okay, there's Creech, and then who are they relaying to? Just the satellite?
Yeah, we'll see the satellites up here, right?
Yeah.
So that's a satellite. Now, the Reapers and the Predators are already aloft, right? And they're flying over Yemen, let's say, and they get, you go, choo, that's 1 second, choo, another second, choo.
So it doesn't, there's not an intermediary human being
No.
between Creech and the attack?
Well, there are usually two human beings in Creech or two
Right.
human.
Right, but there's nothing in between Creech,
Well,
there's not a human,
automatic.
no human being between, their discussion is among themselves, looking at it from,
No, actually, I'm gonna correct you if I'm understanding your question. When, you know, every incident is different.
right,
And I'm sure that at Creech Air Force Base, sometimes the commander can say, okay, fire here in the battlefield. But what also happens is, there's communication between people at Creech Air Force Base and the CIA headquarters at Langley. There's communication from Beale to Creech Air Force Base and from Creech Air Force Base to Beale. Beale is the big surveillance drone base up in Northern California. So a lot of times before they're getting actually ready to decide if they're going to strike or not,
that's when
they will be communication. But, you know, the problem is, this is also covert. This has been going on for years, and we still don't really know. They used to call Tuesdays was it Terror Tuesdays? That was when President Obama met with, you know, these officials, military officials, were given a list. Okay, these are the terrorists that we want to put on the list, and Obama would check it off. Yeah, you can drone these people. But, you know, we don't, in a way, that's kind of a false perception, because it gives you this idea that the commander-in-chief is deciding every time they're gonna kill someone with a drone, and it's not that way at all.
people just kept telling me that they couldn't do it from Creech all the way to there, but they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's how they do it, with the relay and the satellite.
Tuesday list was high value terrorists.
High value term.
So here's the president meeting with John Brennan, who was his terrorism advisor at the time. He comes in with a legal pad, well, being a lawyer, yellow legal pad. Okay, now, Mr. President, we have picked these 5 people to be terminated. Obama looks at the list, and here's my visualization. Well, John, number 4 there, Abdul Rahman, did you tell me last week that he has 5 children? Well, yes, sir, but we've found that his sister had lunch with a known terrorist in Lebanon, and so we think that he's confirmed. And so I said, well, John, look, why don't we put Abdul down, make him number 6, talk about it next week, move 6 up, and we'll just do those 5. And I have to go have lunch with Michelle, please, to see you next week. What the hell is going on? What the hell is going on? The President of the United States, including who's gonna live and who's gonna die, based on a list on a yellow pad, serves the time. I mean, welcome to the yellow list, folks, unless we move quicker than Albert Holzhofer did.
You're saying the list is 10 or 100 times
That's why they're
bigger.
mad at Snowden, huh? That's,
What I'm saying is, a lot of times they have their list of high-level terrorists that they want to target and kill, but they are also killing in Afghanistan just, you know, at the moment when something arises, so. But the thing is, again, it's all very covert. We really don't have 100% understanding about drone papers, you'll learn a lot
Okay,
from
yeah, I
that.
wrote that down.
You really wanna know more detail.
It looks, sounds like we have one more.
What was the difference between Beale Air Force Base and Creech in
Beale-
operational
Beale
terms?
is a surveillance drone base, it's not just drone, but it's a surveillance base.
Only.
So Global Hawk is that big giant Global Hawk that you saw in the pictures, that does not carry armed drone, it's not an armed drone. But the Global Hawk has lots of cameras, it does a lot of surveillance. When they find someone in Beale through the surveillance that they think is a potential target, they'll communicate to Creech. There's this.
And they have
it's like a
automatic
geo.
pickup
Yeah,
of
and
that.
the people at Beale.
You can find, you can find,